So my talk did say accessibility, but Nikki just deleted it. Nikki. So I'm here to talk to you all about accessibility. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Nikki, Zach, and Carl, for letting me come and talk to you about accessibility. Just quickly, just who I am. So feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'm at Azor. I'm currently an iOS developer and accessibility champion at Eubank. Now you might be wondering what an accessibility champion is. So basically when I told my wife I had become an accessibility champion, she asked me, who did I fight to the death to become champion of accessibility? And then her next question was, well, what is accessibility? So I just want to show a video, which you may have seen. This is an Apple commercial. So that was a commercial by Apple. So Sadie, who was at the beginning of that slide at the end there, she actually made that commercial using switch control. And she does actually have a lot of motor control, so she uses buttons on the back of her wheelchair to move her head and actually interact, which is pretty cool. So yeah, in the clip you would have seen switch control, FaceTime using sign language, voiceover, HomeKit, made for iPhone hearing aids, and speak screen. So getting back to what accessibility is, I really like Apple's definition of accessibility, where accessibility means using technology to overcome challenges. And the great thing about this is that accessibility disability isn't actually mentioned anywhere in this definition. And it means that accessibility is really for everyone. It is open for everyone. So by making your apps more accessible, you're making them available and better for everyone, more inclusive. So getting back to accessibility champion. So basically what it means is you are an advocate for accessibility. You become the voice for the people who may not necessarily have a say in the decisions you put into your app and what features go in there. So it's really about being an advocate and continually asking that question, what about accessibility? So often I'll just walk into meetings I'm not necessarily invited to, and just where a developer might, or a designer might be presenting a feature, and I'll just say, what about accessibility, and walk out. And pretty much that's just mic drop. And I do that because I know it'll start a conversation with the designer, whoever is presenting, and they'll get on the right track of making it accessible. So this is, at Eubank, this is where we're trying to get to with our accessibility ready first, like the ready for our sprints. So this is an example of a voiceover script. So on the left-hand side, you can see we have a UI, which has been designed by a designer, and then we have all these overlay buttons, and you've got numbers on them. And basically, we'll be able to take this and give this to a developer, and they'll be able to know exactly what they need to do for accessibility. So on the right-hand side, it's got the numbers, and it's got labels, it's got the trait, it's got hints in there as well. So it's going to make it a lot easier for when we actually go for QA as well, actually. So when QA are testing, they're going to know exactly what they're looking for. They're not going to have to assume and have a lot of technical knowledge on how it works. So one of the main reason I'm here is sort of have a mini rant about apps on the App Store. So this is the beginning of the rant, and I just want to give a quick warning. The slides ahead may offend typesafe viewers, and that's because all the slides are in Objective-C. So this is the App Store app, and this is, to be honest, a very low-hanging fruit thing that you can do is access. I'm not saying this is bad. Sorry. I'm not saying this is bad. I haven't got there yet. This is the good stuff. This is actually this is an example of a good thing. So we have the App Store here. In iOS 13, I've turned on the caption panel down the bottom. So I highly recommend, if you're testing with VoiceOver, turn on the caption panel. And whenever you select an element, it'll actually show the accessibility label down the bottom. Now, I'm going to click next, and VoiceOver is going to talk. It might be loud, but
My account, 48 updates available, button.
So that's the accessibility label on that My Account button in the top right-hand corner. So I have 48 updates available. So My Account, 48 updates available button. And that's broken up into 3 parts. It's broken up into the My Account, which is the accessibility label. And you can see there's some code there of how you can actually set that. And I know this is basic stuff. Like, this is very basic. Everyone can do this. The next part is accessibility value. So the great thing about the difference between the label and the value is that if you're currently looking at this and the value changes, it won't read the whole thing. It'll just read those differences. And again, very simple code. Everyone can do this. And then the next one is the accessibility trait. So here I'm setting it to button. And when you set it to button, VoiceOver infers and adds hints into the end of each accessibility label. So you can have different adjustable image headers, and I've also added in a hint. So this isn't actually being read. You don't necessarily have to put hints in, but if you are using VoiceOver, and I feel like this is like a 101 in accessibility, which is just when I'm talking, okay. So yeah, accessibility hints. If you linger on the button using VoiceOver, it'll read this out. They can be turned off by the user. Now, just remember, this is very low-hanging fruit if you want to start making your apps more accessible. And just a note on this, if you have min and max as the labels, they'll be read out differently than what you think, and you should expand them out. Try not to make the labels too verbose. Don't add punctuation in. Now, I have some apps on screen, and these apps are all missing accessibility labels. So there's obviously been some fires around. So as I do when I download a new app, I turn on accessibility and I audit it, and then I normally send an email to that developer and say these don't work. And I was actually quite surprised that this app here, so I'll play it.
Icon current location, button, possibly, location. Icon map terrain, button.
So what the developer's done is they haven't actually put a title on that button, which is quite common. You don't always have to have titles on your buttons. But what VoiceOver is doing is it's taking the image name and using that as the accessibility label. So that's why it's reading out icon map terrain. So you need to add some labels in there. The next one is Gumtree. Now, this has honestly been like this for 6 months.
Button. Button.
So if you had low vision and you weren't able to see the screen, how would you be able to know what you're selecting? Is this buy, is this sell, is this delete? Like, you're not going to know what's actually there. So they've got the trait right, like they've done something. Well, they haven't actually done anything, that's default. So how hard is it to put a label in? Has he got the label right there? And then the last one is Qantas. So they're a pretty big company, aren't they?
Sure. Digital card, button.
So I'm going to select the top right.
Card icon, button, possibly, settings.
So again, they haven't got accessibility labels, so it's reading out the icon. I've already sent an email to Qantas, so they're supposed to be fixing this. Yeah, so that's like some very common things. Accessibility labels, they're not hard to do. You saw the code. And these are shipping apps as well. Going back to accessibility traits, this is actually a really nice design, like UX pattern I saw with the Outlook app. So when you're using VoiceOver and you're swiping right, you're going to the next UI element. So when you want to navigate in a calendar and you swipe right, it's going to be an infinite list of days. So how would you go from, say, Saturday down to the next following UI element? They've actually done something quite good where they've used the adjustable trait.
Saturday, the 16th of November, no events.
Swipe right.
Adjustable.
And it says adjustable.
Select a date. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
So I'm swiping up.
Sunday,
And it's
the
going to the
17th
next
of
day.
November,
So this is
no
actually,
events.
rather than having all of the days in a sequential list, there's actually an adjustable element now. So it's actually really good. So if you have a sideways carousel, this is a really good way to improve your UX. You don't have to lay out, or your users don't have to scroll through every single element to get to that next UI element. Now there are a whole bunch of other traits as well, like button, link, image, selected. Another really good tip for accessibility and custom actions is basically custom actions. So this is the clock app. So for a sighted user, if you wanted to delete San Francisco, you would have to press edit, and then it would show the delete button, or you could swipe and then have to hit delete. So you can imagine if you're using a screen reader like VoiceOver, that's a few taps. So with a custom action, when you highlight the row, it'll say actions available, and you can swipe up to those actions, double tap and delete it.
San Francisco, yesterday, 19 hours, 3:52 p.m. Actions available.
Actions available.
Delete.
And swipe up, and then double tap, and it's gone.
Sydney, today, plus
So
0 hours,
when you
10:52
click on the
a.m.
custom actions, you're actually helping VoiceOver, you're helping switch control, and you're reducing the taps that the person using those those accessibility features having to actually do. And then this is what the code looks like. Objective-C code doesn't work very well with slides, unfortunately, but so I'll just abbreviate it a bit. We've got UI accessibility custom action. This is a new thing. I had no idea you could do this. It's not new. I just didn't know you could do it. It's new to me. And then in iOS 13, you can actually pass in a completion block. So you can still use the same code you would use when you delete, but it just put in a completion block. The next thing is in iOS 13 is voice control. So that was voice control, for those of you who haven't seen it before. So here's some examples of apps that do that well. This is the new WWDC app, the Apple developer app. And when you say show numbers, you can see a whole bunch of numbers appear. And you can then say that number, tap that number, or whatever it is, and then it will actually interact with that element. The next one is calculator. So this is showing names. All the UI elements are displaying the accessibility label that you would have already updated, and then it actually helps. And then we've got the App Store. So this is actually something where if you look at that button in the top right hand corner, the My Account, if I was to want to select that button, Craig, yes. I would have to say tap My Account, 60 updates available. So it's a very verbose name.
So you have to say exactly that.
You have to say that, yeah.
Well, then start talking.
So if you think that's bad,
no.
Who has heard of the app called Autosleep? I use it
Me too.
all the time. Hopefully the developer's not here. Well, actually, I hope he is here. So this is Autosleep. Basically, it tracks your sleep, and this is a shipping app right now in iOS 13. When I say show names.
Did you tap anything?
I can't unsee that.
David. You'll get these photos.
Oh my god, I can't unsee that. So
What happens if you say press button?
exactly. Hopefully a button is selected. I don't know, but it would probably crash. So the reason this is happening is because people aren't updating accessibility labels. So they have the traits right because they're buttons, but the labels aren't set. So you can see some are working down the bottom, the tab bar. You can't really stuff up a tab bar.
You get it for free, don't
You get it for free, exactly.
Let's back to give you a run for your money on stuffing up tab bars.
So, look, I'm throwing stones and rocks everywhere, but this is the Eubank app. So this is actually a screen.
Who works on that one?
I work at Eubank. I actually built this screen. So yeah, I need to fix this. When I say show names, again. So yeah, that's. So you could see that if I wanted to reorder an account, I'd have to say a very long accessibility label name. That's why you don't want to make your names too verbose and too long. And I can see my product owner shaking his head right now. So this is a Sudoku game. So as you expect, there's buttons on the right, there's called buttons on the left. And when I say show names on this one, so we've got a label on the ad, so I can select the ad. And if I want to select they haven't got any labels again, they don't even have traits on here, so they turn the traits off. And it must be using the image name as the actual accessibility label. So I'm sure you're all dying to know how to fix these problems. So in iOS 13, we have this lovely thing called accessibility user inputs labels, which takes an array of strings. Something to note on this is that it will take the first label as the display label, but then you can add in additional strings to use in those when you're actually talking. So you can add additional information. And then you can also do an attributed string. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
Yeah, does that make it worse?
I haven't tried it. Maybe it just goes really high, you're going to talk really high.
I'm talking in a very low.
Anyway, so reduced transparency, that's another one. So this is a good example. This is when you don't have reduced transparency on. You can see the colors are bleeding through the backgrounds. It's quite nice, but if you are low vision and you can't see that well, you may not be able to actually see the text on screen. So when you turn on reduced transparency, you can see those background colors actually just go solid and you can now see them. I don't have any bad examples of this one, sorry, but this is the code if you want to fix it. Maybe if you have a bad example, let me know. I'll do a follow-up accessibility talk. I don't have a lot of time, but this is one that developers don't seem to do a lot. Dynamic type. So I've got the smallest font, the largest possible font, and then just the default font in the middle there. If you do want to know more about this, there's some sessions at WWDC. Okay, so another cool thing you can do is you can actually make VoiceOver speak other languages, even though your phone is set to English. So here we have a whole bunch of greetings, and this is how VoiceOver reads it.
Hello, Godinette, bonjour, hello.
It's not that bad. So that looks like this, it's just a string, but then if we add in an attributed string using the UI accessibility speech attribute language attribute, and then set the actual language, this is what VoiceOver reads it.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Hola.
Which is a bit better. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, much better. Okay, so the next one. So this next one was actually in the Apple commercial, where there was actually someone taking a photo. Now you may not know.
Like you were in the Apple commercial?
Yeah. So there was a man taking a photo. He's actually blind. He can't see, but yet he's taking a photo. So he has VoiceOver turned on, which I've turned on in the camera app. And you can see at the moment, I've got the caption bar down the bottom and it's saying 0 people. Now if I play the video, just listen to what it says.
Aaron Fitted.
Aaron. Is that your name?
Wow, it knew who I was.
New edge. New left edge. New top edge. New top edge.
So it'll basically tell you where the person is in frame when you go to take a photo. And it knew who I was. So this is using the Photos app. When you tag someone in your photos, it looks for that person using machine learning in the camera. Yes?
Is the intent of that so that like you basically move the camera around until you figure out where they are to be centered and then you center them yourself? Or
Well, like you could easily do that. So you could just point the camera at someone and know where they are and be able to tilt it. It also actually tells you when it's level. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know the camera app did that. And that's using notifications. That's using announce notification. So Aaron centered, and there's a bunch of other UI accessibility notifications. So you should definitely add them. Definitely. Okay, so that's just some accessibility features that I was able to cover tonight. Maybe I'll do a follow-up talk on these ones, but these are the ones I didn't get to. So some to highlight here: reduce motion, adding captions to videos, dark theme, grayscale, grouping accessibility labels. That's a major one. So there's a lot of accessibility features. So it's not just accessibility labels. That's obviously the very low-hanging fruit to fix, and then these things you can start ordering for. So once you have started making you've done your changes, it's probably you start to test. So there are some tools available, and you have one in your pocket. It's your iPhone.
Also on 3:06 p.m.
So what you can do is you can add the accessibility shortcut. So I'm not actually going to get you to do this. I'm not that game.
Also on 3:06 p.m.
But you can turn VoiceOver. If you go into accessibility in the settings app, which is now at the top level, yay, iOS 13, and then go down to
Also on
accessibility
3:06
shortcut,
p.m.
and then you just select VoiceOver, you can then just triple click on the lock button and it will actually just turn
Voice
voiceover
over
on.
on. 3:06 p.m.
Triple click again, it'll turn it off. So if you want to audit your app, you should definitely do that. Actually, not if.
Voice over on. 3:06 p.m.
Audit your app. In Xcode 11, or actually I don't know when this actually went in, but this has been updated, Accessibility Inspector. In Xcode 11, it's got a whole bunch of additional features. I can never get this to work on device. I can only get it to work in simulator.
Follow radar.
Yeah, I should follow radar. Maybe we could do group filing radars.
Everyone can follow the same radar together.
Yeah, copy and paste. You can hit audit and you can select your button. It'll give you a view hierarchy, tell you what the class is, what the label is, what the trait is, etc. And you can also, they've got a run an audit, actually tells you what those errors are. So the hit target's too small, dynamic text is not supported. And then there's also some accessibility overrides, which are on that far tab, because I don't have a photo of that one, so you've got that there. And then in Xcode 11 now, we have this, when you're running your app, you have a environment overrides option. So when you click that, it brings up this. And this is really cool because you can be running your app, you don't have to go into settings and do anything, you can just literally toggle things on and off, and your app will change accordingly. And even if you unplug your device, the app will still stay like that, which is pretty cool. No, it's just the app.
Oh, just that one?
Yeah, it's in the environment, it's just for the app. There was this framework I tried to use. So yeah, the Google Sienna for accessibility. It was very hard to get working. It adds a perform scan button in the bottom left hand corner, which you can drag around. But then when you go to perform a scan, it moves all the way back to there, so you've got to move it again out of the way. It's super annoying. And then when you hit perform scan, it'll basically take a screenshot and then it'll highlight over that, showing all of the actual defects, and you can tap them, and then it will go to this screen which shows more information. Just be wary of this, simply because it does a phone home call to the API service. So even though it's open source, they're still doing Google Analytics stuff.
Wait, Google
Because
dodgy.
privacy? So I've always, that's pretty much all the frameworks I've got to talk about. But I've always wanted to do this. This is one of those things I've always wanted to do. So,
Wait, leave it. I need it.
yeah, I've always wanted to do this. So over the, so I've been working on a tool at Ubank, an internal testing tool for accessibility. And it's called UBK Accessibility Kit. So basically, it's a tool that we use internally to find those accessibility defects. You can use it to find color. You can check the color contrast ratio, which I didn't get to talk to you about tonight, but that's when the foreground and the background color, they're too close together, so you can't actually read them. It also does checks for brand colors, so we use a specific green color in our app. So we can actually, the designer can go into our app with this turned on and know, hey, you're using the wrong FFF8097, it should be 896, whatever that is. And you can see those hex values. You can find missing accessibility labels, which is great. Yay! Yeah. And you can also find missing accessibility hints. You can check if a label does not support dynamic type. And you can find minimum size warnings, which I didn't speak about, 44 by 44. And in iOS 13, we have this thing which is pretty cool. So when you take a screenshot in iOS 13, when the kit's enabled, it'll create a PDF report of that screen, and you can then add that to your Jira or whatever it is as a defect. So, let's see how this goes. Oh, that's so small. So, let's see how this goes. What could go wrong? Okay, alright. Yeah, that's enabled. Cool, alright, so I'll give you a demo of the Git in action. So this is our Ubank beta app. So you can see that there's a little icon there with a red exclamation mark. So if I log in, so you can see there's an icon there. I'm moving it around. So this effectively is the accessibility inspector, and when you tap that icon, when you tap it, it shows that there's 45 warnings on this screen. And then what you can do when you're inspecting, you can tap a label. So you can see I've tapped the currency up the top there, and it's now showing the attributes for that UI element. You can see there's a whole bunch of warnings there. You can see there's some other stuff here for accessibility. You can go through and see some more information. And the other really cool thing you can do live is you can change the color. So you can change your color live in the app, and then you can keep auditing, go around. So you basically use your app everywhere you go. It's constantly checking for those issues, and then it will highlight either different colors depending on where you go. So that's pretty much that's it. Woo. So you're probably wondering why I'm talking to you about an internal testing tool that we use at UBank. Well, we worked really hard on it, and we're very happy to say, well, I'm very happy to say, that it's going to be released open source. So it's going to be an early Christmas present to everyone. So you can go fix those accessibility. You're welcome, Zach. Yeah, so it'll be available on GitHub. It's going to be open source, so please download it, put it in your app, test, fix those accessibility labels. I wouldn't recommend you uploading your app to the App Store with it because you'll probably get rejected. And yeah, so just a couple of final thoughts. So I think as developers and designers, we have this responsibility that we need to be building an easier experience for everyone. You have to keep in mind that your app's going to be shipping with a voiceover interface, a voice control interface, switch control. It's all in there regardless if you like it or not. So you should be testing your apps. You should be making your apps accessible, and try not to get overwhelmed. I know there's a lot of features on that page. Just try to fix them incrementally, and just try to get that low-hanging fruit. Hit the accessibility labels first, and then work your way up that accessibility tree till you become completely accessible. And go make your apps accessible.
Should be on. Alright. Thanks, Aaron. That was a really awesome talk. So we're going to have a bunch of questions. I did just really quickly want to, sorry to turn this into a podcast. I have some real-time follow-up. David Walsh, who does Autosleep, which is one of the apps that Aaron called out, said he keeps meaning to sort that out, and yeah, he was horrified when he heard this at WWDC this year, and so he's going to work on fixing it. And some of the other apps he's already fixed it in, so he did want to mention that as well. So it's great. It's obviously had an impact already, this talk. And now to the real questions. Let's Rob up the back.
Great talk. I didn't know about the language pronunciation thing with NS attributed string, so that will probably come in handy, and thanks for not shaming us.
That'll be next talk.
Yeah.
I've got that on all your apps.
Yeah. Just one question about your library that looks super awesome. Does it debug dark mode at all? Like as in all those like contrast ratios, and does this support dark mode?
Yeah, it does. So if you have it in dark mode, it will check the contrast ratio.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you can switch that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, good job.
It turns out my question is going to be very similar to Rob's. One of the things that we introduced in iOS 13 was a dynamic contrast. Yeah, like it was to do, it's essentially, you can invert the colors, right? So we've got a dynamic invert now at the moment. Does it handle that as well? Have you played around with dynamic invert at all?
Not really played around with it.
Or smart, sorry, it's called smart invert, sorry. Yes, yeah. It's just worth looking at as well. Yeah, it's one of the things that in the betas wasn't too good, but it's fixed now.
Great talk, Aaron. To configure accessibilities for each of your UI elements, we know that there are quite a few boilerplate code and it's a bit tedious. How do you incorporate accessibility configuration into your design pattern?
How do you configure design? Can you bring
Okay, for example, do you have like a repository that you can actually fetch the accessibility configuration for each of your UI element? So how do you achieve that making most of your UI element accessible?
Well, we just set them individually. We do have a UI component guide which has all the necessary accessibility protocols in there, but all UI controls conform to the UI accessibility protocol, so you'll get that anyway. So you just go through and update it.
You already have to set the labels manually, so if this is accessibility on the attributes, it's all part and parcel. You shouldn't think about it afterwards, you should think about it at the time. It's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, you should really try to push accessibility as far left in your design flow as possible. So you do that, so sort of what I showed that screen with the voiceover, you want to push that as far left so the designers are thinking about it, and when it comes to the developer, they don't really have to think about it, they're just going to update it and have that in your acceptance criteria and definition done.
Sorry if I can ask one more question. Okay. Alright, so how do you educate the designers to think about accessibility when they are designing it?
So you can take their phone, put dynamic type all the way up to the top, and then give them the app and say, what do you think of this? And then, yeah, I've done that before. We had a designer at Eubank who was completely against accessible. I won't say completely against. They're not at Eubank, so it's okay. But they didn't really want to hear about accessibility, but then they needed classes, and then they were all for accessibility. So I think if you can try to show lived experience, even if you get users in that have disabilities and ask them how do they use their phone, that can be quite powerful.
Thanks, Aaron.
So, not really anything to do with your talk, but about being an accessibility champion. How is that at Eubank? Like, do you go into the meetings and like 3 people roll their eyes and like 3 people are like, oh, it's Aaron?
No, it's actually really good. So I get fielded by like Androids coming to me going, how can we copy iOS? They do accessibility so well, we get it all the time. So yeah, I get a lot of questions about accessibility, even from the web team. I've had points where people know I'm going to ask about accessibility, so they'll try to jump in ahead of me and say, what about accessibility? Which is great. So it means that it's working, and I don't have to say anything because everyone's already thinking about it. Yeah.
That's really good, yeah. It's cool to hear.
I mean, I could relate my thing, but Westpac sucks.
Um,
I was like, oh no, Charlotte's here. We're in trouble. We didn't do something accessible yet.
One more question. How do you prioritize? So there's a lot of accessibility. We have, so some accessibility will choose the voiceover, some will choose voice control, dynamic text, some of the more low-hanging ones, but obviously there's a lot of accessibility out there. So how do you go about, as within Eubank and as part of your role, how do you prioritize that?
It's a tough question because if you look at analytics, on like you might have tags to know if your users are using specific accessibility features. It doesn't really indicate the people that are using accessibility features because if you haven't implemented them, they're not going to use the features. Yeah, like it's hard to say. I don't really know. Maybe more of a BA question. Like we obviously start with accessibility labels. Let's start there. Hit voiceover, hit switch control, and just work up that tree. Yeah. So sorry.
I'd say it's better to start.
Yeah, just you can start somewhere by
Don't
getting
not start.
accessibility.
There you go. Is that a better one? Don't not start.
Start tomorrow.
Have a minimum fee definition of done.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
Make sure
Yep.
everything meets baseline first, and then pick what's valuable for the customers after that.
And Vision Australia, they conduct audits and they'll give you a report on your app as well. So if you are concerned and you're not sure where to start, maybe reach out to them and say, can you do an audit? And they'll give you a report on all your defects, or most of the defects. But from that, you'll be able to learn, oh, we're not actually also doing this somewhere else, and go from there.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause for that. Favourite segments of the night, hiring and firing.
So this is your chance to give a 30-second pitch if you're looking for work or recruiting, and then we'll go to a break so we can mingle and come back for the final talk from Paul. Ryan.